Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing just fine. I'm wondering what contest I won to get on the show.
Yes, I'm wondering what talent I can give up to get on the, whatever this is. What's it called? Hot Shots?
Yes.
Yes, we are on to episode 2 of Black Mirror, 15 Million Merits. Set in a world where people's lives consist of riding exercise bikes, or at least some people's do. And each of those, while you're pedaling, you earn merits, which is, I suppose, your wages. And then our main character, Bing, meets a woman who's got a wonderful talent for singing, and so gives up 15 million of his merits for her to enter this Hot Shots, which is like a talent competition, much like the X Factor and The Voice and all those kinds of things. And unfortunately, the whole situation then gets twisted from there. Starting some big, bigger names, or not bigger names, but more recognizable names from my point of view. Young Daniel Kaluuya, who would go on to sort of star in lots of things, including obviously with your man does the Twilight Zone now. Peele, Rob.
Yeah.
Jordan Peele is a fan of his. Rupert Everett turns up in this, as is Julia Davis, who's a bit more of a British star, I think, and some others. So, but anyway, what were your thoughts then? Initial thoughts on 15 million merits?
I like this better than I do the previous one. I think that I still have some problems with it. I don't know. It's a good episode. I think that I would say that the ending, which I sort of remember this episode from watching it before, but I think this time the ending struck me as basically exactly right. And that it was, really got stuff right in a way that it didn't in the previous episode. The previous episode I found so unbelievable and just like fundamentally wrong about human nature. And this episode I thought was fundamentally right about human nature.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. This is definitely a stronger episode. And I think casting it completely in sort of like a science fiction world, an enclosed world, works better. Taking away some of that sort of real world elements, I think actually works better for this story. It made me think of like things we've done in a similar situation, like THX. This similar thing of a world where you just throw it into it and you sort of pick up the, what they're doing as you go. Mundane tasks and controlled media, being made to watch certain things and that sort of thing is tropes of all those.
Well, and that will happen. I mean, that's sort of like, we've detected you've turned away from the screen. Obviously that's going to happen pretty shortly here, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
the fact that like one of the things I thought was interesting is that thing of him sort of sat playing his computer games or something else, and then the advert comes on, and he says, skip. Yeah, I want to skip this. What's going to cost you to skip the advert? And you go, well, we've already got that, because you think of YouTube, or you have to buy a premium subscription to avoid the adverts, or any tablet or phone game, that is just absolutely littered with adverts and pop-ups at every opportunity. And if you want to get past them, every time you'd press to get past them, the ability to download it pops up, and you just like, oh, I'll just sit through this for 30 seconds. So yeah, right, we're not that far off a lot of this anyway.
Yeah, and the idea of paying to skip, right? I'm not sure if YouTube Premium was out by then, but one thing that this does really look forward to is, it was going on a bit at the time, but it does really anticipate this sort of subscription-based fee to upgrade minor little things, especially in gaming. So,
Yeah.
I know that you're not a big video gamer, but this is just routine now that you might have a number of options available to you, but to get the hair that you want, to get the outfit that you want, all of that's going to cost money. So, the game is free, or even in some cases, you pay for the game, but you have to earn or pay additional things to get these outfits that you want for your avatar. So this really anticipated that, and the sort of complaint about, why are you spending money on these things that aren't real? And obviously we've all seen news reports of kids who have blown $10,000 or $100,000 of their parents' money on imaginary products, right? Like on things that only exist on a video game server.
So, you're right. I'm not a big gamer, but Ellie, my daughter, she loves Roblox. She's an online sort of app, and it's got a whole bunch of different kinds of games in there. And she can do the same. Like, she can buy things for her avatar, or I don't know, she's got like some sort of digital pet in there and some other stuff. And like, she's forever been like, oh, can I get some Robux? Like, they've literally got a currency for you to buy things. Now, obviously, you got to buy the Robux, but like, it's there. Like you say, I've seen it. Like you say, I see it firsthand. It's that I think it's kind of baffling. But I also seen, more recently, I've seen news stories of people that have, as a joke or out of frustration, deleted other people's, let's say, their digital hoard, their digital possessions, and it resulting in like real world violence, where they've just done, and you
Oh
sort
yeah.
of go, and they go like, well, they never really existed. They go, well, yes, they did. And I suppose this comes to the fad of NFTs as well, this idea of a digital thing having a receipt or whatever. But I see what you're saying. Like, this episode really does weird me out for that.
Yeah. And that stuff is sort of mind blowing. And I can't stand this kind of subscription, app culture and all of this. But I have on occasion said like, okay, I'd pay $10 for, these G1 skins for the Transformers in the game or something, okay. And I've done that, but then I feel really weird afterward, and I need to like go walk in a forest to like feel like I'm
Reconnect.
in a reality, you know. Yeah, and I like the sort of like the system of gestures and the sort of wall covered in iPad sort of screens, and I love that stuff. And but the irony is, I'd be quite comfortable in this reality, I think, compared to a lot of people.
I think, yeah, there's an interesting. Well, the thing is, one of the things I find interesting about this is, again, like you asked, there's information that is drip fed to you throughout the thing. You don't really get to see the outside world, but basically, these people live and work and whatever in a power station. Like, that is what they are doing. Like, they are there. The cycling that they are doing is generating electricity. It said later on, like, how they're basically powering all the lights and all these other things when he goes on hot shots. You go, okay, well, that's an interesting idea. So they've dealt with the idea of fossil fuels by replacing it with this, like you say, this mundane life. But I also like it, as I say, it's a metaphor for the rat race, isn't it? Like, you literally get up to work, to live, to do the next day, and everything else in between is just a distraction from you going back to jumping on the cycle. Which, and when these reality shows, the X Factor, Pop Idol, The Voice, whatever else they are, started to sort of appear, Britain's Got Talent, there's obviously all those sort of things.
Mm.
When they pop up, it is that shortcut. It's seen that shortcut out of the rat race. And so I think this is a much cleaner metaphor and a much cleaner theme than that first episode. And I think it's neater, but not not as I think heavy handed as the first episode.
Yeah, you're right. No, and it was written first, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, because I think a lot of that works. There's still a few clunky bits where you've got the judges on the hot shots are called Judge Hope, Judge Charity, and Judge Wraith. Which is,
Wraith stands out there as not belonging to the others, but he's the one who runs the pornography channel.
Yes,
and he's also a recent addition to the show, right? It's like these shows where they change up the judges slightly every season or something.
Yeah, and they actually say that in this. Oh, but we've had singers, lots of singers last year. We're trying for something different this year. And so I like all this. I like all the, I don't know what to call it, the framework that's being put into this episode. I think it all works really well.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and I think that the thing that irritates me the most is the bicycles providing energy. This is not a very, we've had unfortunately a million discussions about this post Matrix,
yes,
where the human body is not an efficient energy producer, right?
Yeah.
Build an hydroelectric dam and save yourself the expense of this entire system.
Yeah.
It's a little silly. But the other thing that I think of is, and I love what you're saying about the rat race, and sort of how we go to work and we, barely get ahead. And especially today, we work and we struggle to, get a few credits ahead, and then we wind up blowing those on McDonald's or on, entertainment or on virtual currency or whatever it is to entertain us and get us through the doldrums and on to the next day of soul crushing work.
Well, I think the thing is that because it's that thing. The character Dustin, who's the obnoxious cyclist, he sort of represents. He's the one that obviously represents the vast majority. And there's the ginger guy as well. He's just called Colin. And it's this idea of, like you say, they're buying different things for their avatar. He's constantly subscribing to pornography or different shows and all this other stuff. Like, he's just there going, yeah, like, my life's not so bad. I get to sit on this cycle all day, but I get to watch things or play games and do all this other stuff. Like, he's kind of satisfied with that. Like, he's reached his sort of, I don't say potential, but he is comfortable in that thing. And he has what he needs. He's able to. He doesn't want to acknowledge there's a better because he's able to look down on the cleaners, and and be horrible to those whilst doing his bit. So he's like, yeah, I'm in a position of somewhat of not power, but seniority or whatever, and I get to do these things, and it's fun. Like, he has a very middling kind of credits rating or credit amount. It's Daniel and this idea that actually looking for something better out of all this, or Bing the character, looking for something better out of all this, is that, like you said, like people like yourself, where you go, like, I've got to go walk in the woods, like I've got to reconnect with what is real, to not be lost in all this. And there's few people like that, and there's less people like that, I think, with every year, really, as we're just trying to survive.
Yeah, and I think this phenomenon of looking down on the janitor is also one that I think is very apt to our current circumstances. And I see so many people who are making minimum wage, or at least are certainly not getting ahead, who are so rude to a waiter or a waitress or somebody in a queue when they finally get up there. It's, yeah, give me this. Like, what are you talking about? You would never speak to a human being this way. You clearly are relishing this kind of power that you have because you're demeaned otherwise. And this way, I mean, obviously in the South, a lot of, plantations were not owned by most people. And even in the 1960s, most white people were terribly poor in the South, but they got to look down on the blacks who had to use separate drinking fountains and poor facilities and everything else. And this is a system of control, right?
Yes.
That you give people who have so little somebody to look down on and thereby justify and feel proud of themselves, even though they're riding a stationary bike all day.
Well, again, I 100% agree, 100%. And again, I think this comes back to it's never completely addressed in this, and I don't think it's fully that. There's obviously within Britain that we have quite a well-defined class system. And this idea of looking down, I mean, there's always been the joke that was on a show many years ago. Three characters who were like, I am working class, I am middle class, and I am upper class, and I look down on him, and he looks down on him, that sort of thing. And it was even in Blackadder, where Blackadder kicks the cat, and Baldric complains about him kicking the cat, and Blackadder says, it's the way of the world, Baldric. Everybody kicks down. He says, I kick the cat chases the mouse bites Baldric. Sort of, but Baldric being at the bottom of the pile. But it's true. That's the thing, isn't it? And that's what this episode really highlights to me, is that this desire to be that, again, this is one of the things I think was going to say was missing for me from this episode, is for me, they look at this and you get 15 million credits or merits, and you can get onto Hot Shots, right? Or you can just sort of survive. And there's people that have done this. One of the things I feel that's missing is, like, how do they get out of this? How did they apply for these jobs? Were they just allocated these jobs? What would be a way out of this? Like, if they got to 20 million merits, could they buy their way out? And so Hot Shots is almost like, Hot Shots is only 15 million, and I might be able to get out as a singer. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
As an alternative. It doesn't feel like there's another way, that they're choosing almost like the cheaper option. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's that I wanted to back up and say you are very correct in saying that this rolls out pieces of this universe one at a time in an immersive way. And I think that's something that Charlie Brooker is very good at. And we'll see that going forward in episode after episode, that it gives you all the information you need very reliably, but rolls it out a bit at a time in a way that makes you feel as if you're immersed.
Yes.
One thing that this episode does not give us is that wider world. And what are the classes above this? How does one become a host on Hot Shots instead of somebody on a bike? Obviously, they mentioned people on bikes, so that's like the vast majority of people in this world, right? But some people are janitors. Obviously we see somebody kind of get demoted to janitor. So there's some sort of mobility, but we don't understand how this works. And I think it would be nice to see that. I don't know whether that's necessary, but you're right. Like, what is the goal here? And if there were a 30 million option to move somewhere else, I mean, it's not even clear that you can get a better room, right?
Yeah.
You just kind of get better video games, which, by the way, is one of the weaker point of the episode. These sort of avatars that are blocky, and the shooting game that even in 2011 is pathetic.
Yeah.
It's just so silly.
I do want to mention that. I want to get back. We'll come back around to that in a minute. But yeah, carry on.
No, I mean, I was just going to say that, like, you can't apparently buy bigger quarters. You can't sort of get out of here. And it would seem, in a episode that is so good at its social satire and its social commentary of the way people look down on others, and the way these systems work us against each other and resist change, including the end with the commodification of dissent. which I think is its best point, that it doesn't have that outlet outside of Hotshot so that people can say, because that's what we say over here, right? Well, you should have worked harder.
Exactly.
If you don't like it, work hard.
Yeah.
Well, here, if you don't like it, work hard, you get a better video game, right?
Yeah.
That's not like getting out.
No, and I think that's the one bit I think, like I say, I agree, that's missing, like a lift up. You've just struck another a part of my this class thing. I think you're right. The other thing is we only ever see cyclists and janitors. Where they're almost, to me, again, like you say, there's no supervisor character. They just turn up to work and do their thing. Like they're driven by this need for credits. I don't know what drives them, what makes them get there on time, or what happens if they're sick or whatever. Like I say, you almost need like a supervisor character that treats them all like crap as well, to be like, well, I look down on you for you to look down on them sort of thing. Because it's clearly there, this idea of being looked down upon. Because when they go to the Hot Shots thing, the people that work in the studio all look down on the cyclists. Like they treat them like idiots. So yeah, it feels like there's a little bit of that missing. But this thing of we say about class, and you said to roll out the information. One of the sneaky things I think I like about, I agree with the graphics being pretty terrible. But what I find funny, and that is quite clever, is it's not zombies they're shooting at. It's not aliens. It's janitors. It's caretakers.
Yeah.
And so already those janitors at the bottom of the pile are demonized because you get to shoot them as part of your game. And they're all fat and they're not fat, but they're round and they're depicted in that way in those big yellow outfits and stuff. So they're designed to be the demonized at the bottom of society. And so again, it's sort of like, it's not really mentioned or said, but it's a fascinating moment when you realize that, oh my God, yeah, that those poor janitors that sort of get kicked around the whole time are really we feel bad for these cyclists, but they're not even the bottom of the pile. So it is interesting that those sort of, what you said, the structure that's put around this works really, really well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that we have much better idea of how this society works and of these dynamics and of what this episode is getting at. And I think that the the whole hotshot thing, I guess I find it, if I could complain, I would say the need to unify this with with a game show like that, a reality competition show. There's a lot that works here that actually, if you took out Hotshot, I mean, it's almost 2 episodes merged together. And that's okay. I mean, I think it works together. I just think it doesn't need to be together. And, I mean, and I think that it only underlines this point about that you've made about sort of how is Hotshot the only way out?
Yeah.
Well, right. And I guess that I'm also a little dismayed at how Bing, the main character, gives the 15 million credits to Abby right away. And we're supposed to believe that that's because of him not having seen anything real and whatnot. But there is a sort of, he holds her hand. We're not supposed to think that anything romantic has happened between them. But clearly he is attracted to her and would like something to happen. And he is so supportive of her, beautifully, wonderfully. But at the same time, there is a creepy element in which you think, like, oh, is he going to hit on Abby and Abby's going to feel obligated to have sex with him because he's given her 15 million credits? That never happens. He just holds her hand. But at the same time, I am sort of worried that he's going to be too creepy, but I'm also worried that he's going to be too passive, that he is like super passive to give a stranger 15 million credits and then never try to kiss her and still be messed up about her. And I don't know how relationships work in this world, but I am kind of creeped out by both sides of that.
Well, you're right, because I think this is one of the things with the character of Bing being passive is you get certain bits of information, like you know that his brother died and left him 15 million merits.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he inherited that money, or that, I don't know, those merits. So he hasn't earned them himself. So he hasn't got like the same attachment to them in that sense. But yeah, this idea of like he hears Abby sing and she's like, "Oh my God, it's beautiful," and she's a fine singer, but it's what is the it's just is it there's this again, like this motivation. I don't see that he's browbeaten enough to see that like I've got to put something good into the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he just, like you say, and this is one of the things I often feel with Daniel Kaluuya is he's got like two sets of performances. Like when I've seen him do other things, and we talked about we not for the show, but we talked about sort of there was Nope. Like he plays a very sort of weirdly passive character in that as well. And it's very similar, and it's kind of off-putting at times. But he's very good in other things. Like I think he's really good in Get Out, but he does have this sort of like this trait that he seems to have been passive, and I feel the same way. That I'm like, well, I don't know what his motivation is, because if she wins, is he looking to ride her coattails and sort of like, maybe not in a sexual sense, but he's like, well, if I can get her to be a celebrity, like she'll take me with her to be her assistant or whatever. Like, this is my get out. Like, is he being more Machiavellian? Is it like a scheme? But like, it never feels that like. So
No, it doesn't.
So he's pure. Okay, well, if he's pure, like, what does it give him at the end? I don't get his motivation. So when it's corrupted, it's 100% pure. Like this is a fully altruistic act that he feels is corrupted. Something beautiful has been sullied. That's the point where I'm like, oh, okay, like this is a bit fairy tale-ish, but
yeah, and I think that I think you're right that sort of Daniel Kaluuya has sort of two modes here. One is shockingly passive, and the other is Oscar performance,
yeah,
angry.
yeah,
And he's fantastic
mm,
in that moment. I mean, devastatingly good. You can't look away. Anyone in earshot stops what they're doing and comes to watch the show. That's amazing stuff. But there's nothing in between. And I think in retrospect, obviously this was the end of 2011. We're now a dozen years on. And in retrospect, it feels a little incel. It
yes,
feels, like really this is, hey, look, I'm a lonely guy. But I mean, this is a lonely guy who like has a life he doesn't know what any of it's about. And he hears and sees this beautiful woman who he thinks has talent, and now we know he's hitting on her because he's saying the words to her that the girl who likes him has told him.
yes,
And there's this, and I think that's very clever. I think that's very true to life. I mean, I always found that it's very frustrating, but it's very common that we don't like people who like us, right?
yeah,
Um, a lot of people fall into this trap, and it really is a trap. But I sort of have seen this time and time again in life where there are these like long chains of people where it's like Mary just took John out for a meal. John has a date tomorrow with with
yes,
Barbara, and he's paying for her meal. Barbara is in love with Bob and is going to go to his house later and cook him a meal, and it's like Bob is secretly having an affair with someone, and it just goes on and on and on in a way that is really upsetting. But anyway, I really like that dynamic there. But it's clear that he's a little creepy. I mean, that's a little bit of a liar kind of creepy thing to
yes,
do. He's trying to impress her, but also too shy to make a move, and ultimately is willing to, we assume, really go through and kill himself and bust his butt to make a statement about how she's been corrupted. Well, that's really creepy to put her on a pedestal as if she was the
Thank
one
you.
good, beautiful thing.
Like he does, he puts her on a pedestal, and obviously they've chosen a very pretty actress, and it's made, you know, they make a point of that, and she has a very good voice when she sings, and it's this thing of, you know, why is she put on this pedestal? And you say about this incel thing, it's again, it comes back to this idea of motivation. Like he's put her on a pedestal, he idolizes her as a way of this beautiful thing. I mean, it's, you know, when I see the actress, I'm thinking, okay, you've made her look very sort of Snow White. She looks, you know, she is very sort of English Rose, you know, kind of. I'd expect to see her in some sort of period drama, like costume drama or something like that. She has that very typical look. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, you've sort of put her on this pedestal, but you don't know her. And this, you know, you said about this sort of this thing of creepy. So this anger at what happens to her, it is also kind of creepy and misplaced. Because what I think is, she is sort of, I don't know if it's about bullied, but is definitely sort of railroaded a little bit into the option that you're a great singer, but you know, we've got enough singers, so what? But you're very attractive, got a cracking body, so we want you on our pornography stream, and that's what she ends up choosing, and he's upset by that. And but what's more concerning to me is when you learn about how this thing works, and that the Judge Wraith says, you will never, you know, you will basically live in a dream, never feel anything but pleasure, and sort of stuff. And it's you know, it's not sexual. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not. He's basically saying you're going to be sedated throughout the lot, so you're not going to feel anything. And then when the video is streamed and it shows the trailer or sort of the commercial for her, be her first sort of, you know, pornographic film, which is it's not graphic anymore, but it's very sort of quite disturbing. She's clearly sedated.
Yeah, she does seem out of it.
And you know, she's like some of the words, and she's sort of the way it's been done. And it's again, it's not the fact, and this is the thing that sort of got to me. It's not the fact that this woman has been railroaded into these sort of like basically sort of to being sedated and then being forced into these sexual acts that has angered him. It's that his ideal of something good has been corrupted. And again, it's like this idea, it's kind of selfish that like by the end of it, Abby's not the point.
Yeah.
You know, because you're led sort of, and I was like, this is the first time I've ever really realized it watching this. I was like, oh, Abby could have been anybody. Like, Abby's not that important to him. It's just something that feels good in this mundane world. Yeah. Oh, Bing's not actually a good person.
No, he's not. No, that's a very, I think that's taking it the next level. I hadn't thought about that, but that's completely correct, right? I mean, she is a high school crush, right? She is my life sucks. I'm attracted to this person. Well, she is, you know, I mean, to tie this back to our media culture, she is every celebrity that somebody had a crush on and thinks they know, right?
Yes. Yeah,
like you don't actually know this person, dude. Like this is not this. Don't make this person your rose in a field of shit. You know, your life's not going to be better until your life's better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think, you know, again, when you watch this as a sort of casual viewing, like he then spends however long. I think it's supposed to be several seasons. So, you know, some because it shows like because it's like the cycling. I like the fact that cycling has now got snow on it and stuff. He gains his 15 million merits by sort of like, you know, not eating, using minimal sort of energy and all this other stuff going on. And then he goes on, he's like building up this dance routine. But then when he does get on, and he gives this, as you say, fantastic performance, this monologue of rage and frustration. It's the fact that when he's confronted about it, like they're like, all right, what are you gonna do next? And he's a bit like, oh, I don't really know. I haven't really got to that point.
Yeah.
or tell us what you're feeling, and he sort of lets it all out. It all feels a little bit like, again, it's him, isn't it? It's like a Falling Down with Michael Douglas. It's that sort of like, I'm just really angry about everything,
Yeah.
and this is the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. And it feels very premeditated, obviously. Like he spent time doing this. And I want to be careful how we put it this way: if he was in modern culture, what would he be doing otherwise? Would this be someone that gets a gun and walks into a populated area, or
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the other comparison besides Falling Down, which I think is, a fascinating movie, is Network.
Mm,
And there much clearer that the ranting character has a mental illness.
yeah,
Um, but his rants still touch a nerve and still get commodified, right,
yeah, yeah,
by a society eager to hear these things because they do touch a nerve, because not everything's well, right? But yeah, I mean, I did kind of wonder why it's so premeditated. You spent all that time earning these new 15 million merits, and you haven't planned a speech at all. Like,
mm,
he kind of might know the gist of what he's going to say, but haven't you thought about it in your head ahead of time? Like, I might not write down a speech, I might not rehearse it, um, but also, I'm an accomplished public speaker. Like,
yeah,
I can't imagine somebody who's so shy, being so articulate when they go off. But especially for somebody who has spent all of those months learning how to dance from scratch. Like,
yeah.
let's not overlook this fact. He has no talent.
Mm,
He has no talent. He has taught himself a talent in order to do it on this show prior to murdering himself on air, and ranting. It's a little strange to me. Why did you learn the talent?
yeah, yeah. What's the point? Like, go straight to pulling out the glass.
Right, like, just
Um,
tell them that you're a dancer or something, and they never hear you sing, they never see you dance as any part of it, it's just based on 15 million merits. You didn't have to have this dance bit.
no, it does feel a bit superfluous, doesn't it? I mean, it's a bit like we want to see Daniel Kaluuya dancing around a stage. So we're gonna have
Yes.
this. We're gonna have this moment, and then it will turn into this. I think the idea is it's supposed to be shocking, but it's not, because you've already seen him pick up the
Mm.
shard of glass, so you sort of know what's coming.
Well,
Um,
actually, it's less shocking to me because I assume, even knowing the plot, every time I watch it, I assume he's going to kill one of the judges, presumably
mm,
Wraith. Um, why wouldn't you kill Wraith?
yeah,
Because you're so passive, you're going to kill yourself on TV? And again,
yeah, I know, and that's the well, yeah. I mean, the whole bit with the whole, and also, like you say, the performance, the monologue's very good. Um, and then it's the fact it gets commodified so quickly, and he accepts it so quickly. Because it's the ultimatum he gets given. Rupert Everett as Judge Hope, and he's obviously supposed to be playing like the Simon Cowell kind of thing, but it's like, that is the most
yeah.
heartfelt, passionate thing I've seen ever. And he's like, I'm going to give you two half-an-hour slots, two 30-minute slots on my network a week. And Bing's like, sort of the comeback is from, again, it's Judge Charity who sort of chimes in, who's like, well, it's either that or the cycles. And I'm going, hang on, like, no, there's got to be some. He's got a blade of a shard of glass. Like, what is there not some like security that's going to come
Yeah.
in and he's going to get arrested, or like what? There's no comeuppance for this. Like, this is bizarre. Yeah, it's like I say, it leads the commodification, which is I get, but
Yeah, I
uh,
was puzzled by the security too. I mean, each time I watch this, I'm like, oh, I mean, he says, "Don't come any closer," he has this line there, but then we never actually see the security that he's worried about. And I mean, I'm willing to go along with him being commodified that quickly, because it's kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to kill myself. Does he really want to do that? I don't think so. So, I mean, I'm okay with that, but you're right that it's very strange. There's no other option besides being a cyclist or famous, right? There's nothing in between. Um, it's also strange to me, how do they not know that, like, there's a new judge, the new porn judge
Yeah,
means that they're not taking singers anymore? Like, the season has already started. I
yeah.
mean, I guess they're not watching the show that they pay 15 million credits to go on to.
I don't. Yeah, there is these gaps, the plot holes of like, yeah, they would have known. But again, the thing they keep hyping is this previous winner.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
I can't remember the character's name, but there's a previous winner, isn't there? Selma. Um,
Yeah.
who they're
Yeah.
like, I want to be as big as Selma and this other stuff. So there's this upper this thing to reach for, this target character. So that's the sort of thing they're looking for. So I assume, I suppose that's the thing. Well, I've come on as a singer. I want to be a singer. Um, but you're right that everyone should be watching this. Like, has nobody else been sort of like pushed into the pornographic route? Is there anybody else that's already been,
Sure.
you know, already had this happen? Is this the first one? Is this is this the first round or whatever? And she won. Like, is that it? Like, there doesn't appear to be like, with a lot of these, there's like, they go into rounds and they go to a grand final. Like, there doesn't seem to have been. It's just like straight from the the opening episode to cool, go join the porn channel. Like, it's a little bit, quick.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, the
Yeah.
structure of the show doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense. Um.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, I'd also say that him being able to earn that other 15 million credits, like, it's done in a montage.
Mm,
But if he's able to earn that quickly, I know the show hasn't given us another mechanism to get out of it besides Hotshot, but if he's able to earn, I took it. There's an earlier line where they say that's like 6 months' work.
mm,
So, and we know that tattoo sort of, um, burn on the hand takes about 2 months to fade, and we see that
yeah.
it's faded. So, my guess is it's something on the order of 6 months.
Mm,
But if you're able to earn that in 6 months, why is everybody else so horrible at earning money? And isn't this actually kind of like an upwardly mobile society? I mean, anything you can buy with credits, with merits, you can buy relatively quickly, right?
yeah.
15 million is a lot to them. It's about 6 months. If somebody said to a worker at McDonald's, like, in 6 months, you could totally escape this life, we'd be like, that sounds like a utopia.
Yeah, yeah. But then that's the thing. But there's no alternative, is there? There's no out. Like, they seem very tied to this thing. Um, I don't know. It's that thing, like you say. There's no because there's no other alternative that's like the 30 million, the 25 million, or whatever, like, that could get them out. That they're choosing not to work towards. And they are taking, like you say, they're taking the easier route out. Feels, that sort of is where I don't know. I think it feels like it's a bit of a cop out, really.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what are your thoughts about the ending? Let's get to the ending. So he obviously he gets given a show that we then see Dustin, the obnoxious one, is watching. And so is the ginger guy Colin. So they're actually watching his new show. What are your
yeah,
thoughts
I
about the
think
way
that
that
works
ends?
brilliantly. I think it is really fantastic in terms of how it depicts that commodification of dissent, right?
Mm.
That um, I it's not perfect, but the idea that, right, we then sell you the feeds to complain about the feeds that you don't like
Yeah.
is really quite brilliant. I mean, the thing that I don't like about it is that he apparently holds the shard to his neck as a gimmick during
Mm.
every rant. That seems a little over the top, like that gimmick would wear off pretty fast. Um, but I like that Dustin sort of douchebag sees a clip of Bing, and that Bing stops being the main character at that point. I think
Mm.
that's quite brilliant. And we see Dustin see it, and Dustin, for all of his stupidity, goes, "Yeah, that's right," and then just cuts back to a feed of him,
Yeah.
tracking along, and clearly nothing has changed. So I think all of that is well done, with the exception of how over the top the Shard twice a week. Really, you're really doing a rant at that level twice a week with a shard of glass at your neck. So, and he, not only that, but he threatens to kill himself at the end of that rant. He's
Oh,
like, "I'm going to do it now," and then it cuts, right?
yeah. Well, no, it's it's like always like I could, yeah, I can't tolerate this anymore, and it sort of stops us until next week or till the next episode. Um, what's interesting about the end though is, as you said, like he has a bigger. He's finally got that bigger room. He's now obviously got that. Um, he's got like a version of his cell, the TV cell that he had in his new accommodation, which is where he does his streaming from. And it is a stream. It's not a studio because that's the rest of it is his house. Because then he walks out, he's got a bathroom, he gets the orange juice, and he looks out over those. Well, we'll talk. I want to just quickly question about those, but he basically looks out over a bunch of trees, but he's still alone.
Yeah.
There's no sort of like pandering entourage or anyone else going like fantastic, oh you're amazing, like it's he's still alone. He's still got the fresh orange juice because obviously there's the whole discussion about choosing better things for you, but he's still alone, and he's obviously looking out over those trees, and again I'm like, are the trees trying to say like they're producing green energy, so the trees are all sort of surviving, or are they even windows? Is that just another set of view screens that are producing something for him to look at?
I don't know. I thought that they were windows, but also had the same question.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's still alone. Again, it's this sort of like, well, it's better than where I was at. Um, and sort of thought of, what are you willing to tolerate? How much do we tolerate before we have a revolution, right? Before
Yeah.
society breaks down. And obviously the answer is a lot.
Yeah.
But the ways that we tolerate based are really forms of bread and circuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, if we, yes, obviously we're living under an emperor in ancient Rome, it's despicable, we're subject to the whims of the magistrates, and there's literally feces and urine flowing through the streets, and there are fires every few years that kill thousands of people. But on the other hand, we've got gladiators killing each other, and at least you're not a slave or a gladiator. And today, it's like, well, yes, I can't pay the rent without putting it on credit card. I have no hope of ever owning a home. I have no hope of putting my kids through college because I can't pay for the rent, let alone their college. I'm desperate, but when's that new video game coming out? And hey, I heard that Ant-Man is coming out on Disney
Yeah.
Plus soon. And this is true. We see that enthusiasm, that giddiness
Mm.
in response to these things by people who really, you think like, really? Are you that, do you have room for that giddiness in your life? I mean, I'm glad for anything that makes somebody happy, but it's so hard to take up that revolutionary Molotov cocktail, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what's probably going to happen to you if you're the first.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, what I do like is that obviously at the end of this episode, this commodification of dissent, as you say, is important and clearly happens. But one of the things is I'm glad he doesn't become a Katniss Everdeen. Like he's not like, oh, he's going to lead a rebellion now. Like he's become like the symbol of dissent across the other thing, and this whole structure is going to fall apart. It is very much like you said; it just absorbs it, and he actually becomes a part of that system. Because that's what we do. We just keep going day to day and just hope that we have a relatively okay day so we can get on to the next day and do the same the same shit again, jump on that cycle and just keep going. So yeah,
Well, and that symbol for the revolution is the American ending, right? That's the American ending of like, yeah, we might even have the same scene with a bicycle, uh, and with um, and with Dustin, but there'd be a scene of like Bing's face being spray painted on a brick on the street or something, and it'd be like, oh, the revolution's brewing.
exactly. Yeah, that would be thinking he's instigated something. Um, and it just I'm glad that it isn't that. Like you said, that moment is Dustin looking at it and going like, yeah, and then moving on to watching whatever show that he's watching or the pornography or anything like that. So yeah, I like the fact it's a lot more weirdly by having a science fiction um environment and and world. It actually feels a lot closer to reality than possibly the first one did.
Hmm.
So yes, okay.
Yeah, very true.
Any final thoughts then for um 15 million merits?
Yeah, one thing that's always fascinated me about this, is that I think it's both a sort of depiction of this sort of iPad obsessed culture and sort of, um, the whole merit system, and merged with hotshot and reality television, which don't necessarily go together. But there's a third strain in my mind, which is mind altering drugs that
Mm,
really goes back to everybody likes to talk about 1984, but really that's the key trait of Brave New World, where they have soma, which is what gives people not just happiness but this sort of mind altering religious experience,
mm,
um, and you know keeps them sort of compliant. Here we have that compliance, which is not totally clear what it is. It's this sort of carton that Abby has to drink before she goes on stage that nobody warns them about, right? There's no like disclosure that you're
yeah.
going to have to do this. And while we're never told what it is, it's clear that it somehow makes them more compliant or chill
More
or
docile, I
something.
suppose. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do that. I mean, if somebody is rehearsed as a singer, the last thing you want to do is introduce psychotropic substances before they go on stage to perform in real time. I mean, I don't know how this works, but clearly it's important. Um, I don't
Well,
think
it's
it adds
not.
anything.
It's not though, because he doesn't. We never get to see him
Right.
take it for his performance.
Well, but the question is, could he have done his rant if he wasn't on it? If he was on it?
Mm,
He in the compliance box that she drank in order to get on stage and do the performance. So I think, and then we find out what you're talking about, Abby being kind of um, dosed and kind of docile and messed up in those porn videos. Which I would also complain are type quite tame.
mm,
Um, she is told by Rafe, like, if you're worried about shame and all of those sorts of feelings, don't. We'll give you these drugs. And I'm not sure that those drugs are 100%. Obviously, there's a sort of rapey aspect to them here.
mm.
She, she is then dosed, and you were talking about this earlier. There's a sort of bad aspect to that, but this need not be entirely bad. I think it's a much bigger problem that she's not making a choice to be a porn star if she's on a drug that's compliance at the
Yes,
time,
that's a
which we
really good
don't
point,
really
actually.
see the effect of. So I think that in terms of, we know that there are a multitude of drugs that are used
Mm,
in this world to regulate mood, but they're not part of the life of the main characters on a daily basis.
mm.
And so I find myself wondering about that, wondering if that's in the drugs, in the food that they're given that's artificial, and wondering, to me, this is a whole third strain of science fiction that's in this episode that is like still barely there, that I want it to be more, and it's barely touched on.
No, that's a really good point because it's sort of like you say it's alluded to but never explained or never explored, is it? Because I've never thought about that. That yeah, she takes this compliance and then is quite easily driven to make the decision about being a porn star. But like, what does this drug do? Because then we see others, like say Bing going off on one with his rant. But then we also see the character Glee, that the woman who keeps getting told to wait and she's there forever, basically, perpetually in the waiting room, finally getting to sing and she's terrible and she gets told she's terrible. Well, she then gets to rant back and say, like, it's my destiny and I'm the great singer and all this other stuff. And again, you say, like, yeah, if there's that drug, what's the purpose of that drug then? Is it to keep, is it to subside nerves and make them a little bit more confident, or is it to make them a little more compliant? I don't know. But what purpose does it serve? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, because there's no other mention of real drugs in this. I like what you're saying about this other thing about these, and often in these things of like controlled societies, there is this thing about the use of drugs. You say Brave New World, a rip off of that being Equilibrium with Christian Bale. There's a very similar sort of thing. This sort of like mood suppressants and stuff. And even THX did it.
Well, it's also there in Do Androids Dream Electric Sheep,
Yeah.
even if it's not in Blade Runner. I love, how they use those dials in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. That's a main thrust of the plot, at least in the sort of B plot. And here it's just kind of something in the background. But you're right, that rant at the end, sort of, of the girl with the white hair, sort of indicates, well, what is the point of this compliance if you it's very strange. And I feel like, if are we supposed to think that it's in their food, in which case is part of the point when he drinks the orange juice at the end, like, does it have or does it not have the compliance in it? I don't know. I'm thinking too hard.
No, I think we are. I think maybe it might even be that there's a lot in this show. It may well have been a part of more part of an earlier draft.
Yep.
And there was a thing of like, right, well, that's too complicated, or there's too much going on here. There's let's drop all this. But this one reference to this compliance drug is not dropped. It was still shot, and they're like, oh, really should probably cut that out. But it feels like they should have a bigger piece to this, and I'd be interested to see if it was.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
Probably they said, it's already 62 minutes, so we got to cut. I don't know.
Or it's too dense, because like you say, there's bits to explain it. But yeah,
all I know is I want to get merits. I want to get paid to ride a bicycle. I mean, you do realize, like, basically this is go to the gym to make your money. Like, that sounds awesome.
Well, that's the other thing as well, actually. One of the things that we talk about, because she talks about him eating fast food, and she talks about, well, you make a better choice because she eats healthier. But I'm like, yeah, he eats bad, not particularly great food, but he's still cycling for like 8 hours a day. So it's not it can't be that terrible. So what they've done is they've created a sort of a sub set of culture, or subset of society that's incredibly fit. So
yes, and if the revolution involves running a lot,
yeah. It's is it? Yeah, I mean, if they all stopped cycling, like, what happens? Could they go on strike and be like, we're not going to cycle anymore? They're unified or whatever. I don't know. There's interesting parts to that as well. Anyway, we'll bring this episode to a close. So for now, ladies and gentlemen, hop on your bikes and come and talk to us. Find us at Pod Time Space and let us know what do you think of the second episode, 15 Million Merits of Black Mirror. Do you like it? Do you think it's as good as, better than the first episode? Does it stand out to you? And what are your thoughts on it? Come let us know. And if you like what we're doing, as always, leave a review. We greatly appreciate any reviews that we get. And if you really like what we're doing, check out our Patreon. There's a link down below, www.patreon.com/20CG Media. But yeah, for now, Julian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys very much, and we shall talk to you soon on the next episode.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.